Guys, this time we have the other semifinal game for you. We talked about Alabama, Michigan in the prior video. This time we're going to talk about the other two playoff teams, the Texas Longhorns and the Washington Huskies in the Sugar Bowl down in New Orleans. Evan, what are your initial thoughts on this game?
This is going to be a swing game. So I think you got to give a ton of credit to Washington. Some people are obviously they had the undefeated season, but at number two in the country now and number two in the playoff, people are probably going to be questioning, are they really that good? What is really special about them? Well, what's really special about them is Michael Penix Jr. You got 33 touchdowns, 9 picks, and we'll see how much he can score against a Texas defense. That's been pretty well. Another thing of note, I looked at the stats, and at least according to the NCAA rankings, Washington's defense is not even in the top 50 when every other playoff team is about top 25, top 20. So you got to consider that too. Is their defense going to be a weakness? This should be a pretty evenly matched battle. I'm looking forward to it.
So, so for me, my initial thought is, Texas. They made the playoff for the first time ever. Are they actually back? That's well, I'm kind of giving it away a little bit, but that's my main storyline for this game for Texas. Are they actually back? No Big 12 title since 2009, which they took care of this year. No national championship since 2005. Well, yet we'll see it here in a couple weeks if they take care of that. But this should be a great game, like Evan said. You have the high-powered Washington offense against a Texas defense that I think hasn't played great at times, but you've seen them play. You've seen them play top tier defensive football, especially in the Alabama game. At times, you saw them get after Jalen Milroe, not let him get out of the pocket, keep him in the pocket, which obviously led to Texas beating Alabama early in the year. Which we could see a rematch in the national championship game. Let's just say that.
That is true. I did not even think about that. Wow. It's because it seems so unlikely, right? It's the 3 and 4 seed, but that is true, Jordan. Yeah.
Fun fact: we have seen the 3 and 4 teams win the semifinal games before. In 2018, Georgia was a 3 seed, beat Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, the best Rose Bowl of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was a great
And
game.
then we saw Alabama beat Clemson 4-1 matchup in the Sugar Bowl, which are
Oh,
ironically the two playoff games this year, the two playoff bowls, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl.
it's lining up. The stars are aligning. We'll see.
I guess. Let's dive into this game a little bit. Texas offensively is averaging 36.2 points a game this year. Now, now you can make of what that they only played two teams. So what I did was I found out how many points a game they're scoring against Power 5 teams. And actually they're scoring more, 36.7 points a game against Power 5 teams and they're scoring overall, which is 36.2. Evan, do you find that surprising?
I find that surprising, but I find that really good news for Texas and why you were questioning was Texas back. I think they are. I think you're one of the top four teams in the country. You can say officially they're back. But also with that stat specifically, it shows that, some of the lighter teams you could take it a little easier, but some of the big, like, your Big 12 competition, Alabama, you play up to them. So that's a really good sign for Texas heading into a playoff game.
It is. So let's talk about how each team got here, right? Texas, like I mentioned, hadn't won a Big 12 championship since 2009. They took care of that, disposing of what I think was a surprise Oklahoma State team in the Big 12 championship game. They won that game handily, 49-21, to punch their ticket to the playoff. Washington defeated Oregon for a second time this year. As you guys remember, the first time they faced off was in October in a game that Washington won up in Seattle. Rematch was in Vegas for the Pac-12 championship, and Washington came out on top on in that one.
Yeah, so winning changes everything, right? And winning changed my opinion on Texas a lot. Texas, I thought was the same old Texas. I thought, eventually they're going to fall apart. You saw the Oklahoma game they lost earlier in the year. Very close game, of course, but and then you just knew, like, I thought it was going to be the championship game. I had predicted Oklahoma State was going to win, and that game wasn't even close. It was, you could argue it was over at halftime. I know that, there's mathematically they're still in, but Texas would not stop scoring. So we talk about the 2009 team. Quinn Ewers kind of reminds me a little bit of Colt McCoy a little bit, in the style of how he plays. And yeah, just very impressive. And for Washington, I mean, geez, the Pac-12 was so strong this year, and to go undefeated in that conference, that says a lot. I just can't tell you guys enough how excited I am about this game. Washington versus Texas. Well,
All right. So key players here. When Texas has the football, Evan, who are you looking at?
so Brooks has been a pretty good running back this year. Obviously Ewers. I don't know. I really with Texas more than any of the four teams. I think they're gonna have to have a really good scripted start. You want if you're Texas, you want to get out as far ahead as you can. Because you're the underdog technically. You're the I don't know if they are by Vegas metrics or whatever, but I know that
Texas is favored by 4, I believe.
okay, so they're the Vegas favorite, but they're also the 3 seed, and they're not the 2 seed. So technically, they're the underdog in that aspect, even though if they're predicted to win, or forecasted to win. So you got to have a really good script to start off. I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot with Quinn Ewers. I think they're going to start out strong with that. Try to get to an early lead and put pressure on Penix. So I would that key players. I'm watching what they do with Ewers. Is it going to be a lot of pass heavy like we saw versus Oklahoma State, try to get Washington out of their group. Again,
So
against, like I said, a not top 50 defense compared to the rest of the playoff. Washington's defense isn't as great. Well,
I do think that Texas is aware of Washington's second defensive woes a little bit. Outside of the top 50, like Evan mentioned. So I expect Quinn Ewers to come out and air it out. And then when Washington has the football, Evan, who are you looking at?
I hate to be boring, but then this game in a scoring contest like this, it is both of the quarterbacks. It is Michael Penix Jr. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was in competition for the Heisman. Maybe some might even still argue still out there. I disagree with that, but just a phenomenal season. But it's going to come down to him. He had to carry them versus Oregon. Check. But like I said in the other game, Alabama beat Georgia. That's a little more familiar territory for them. Oregon and Washington is very familiar territory, even more so than Alabama and Georgia. So you studied up your rival. That's good. Can you do it versus an explosive offense you don't really know a ton about? And can you and of course for Penix's sake, because that's why I said as my player I'm watching. Can you still hit the ground running versus Texas? Or are you going to come out a little sloppy? I mean, we've seen that with Washington a little bit versus Washington State in the last game of the season. They almost lost. Some Penix heroics and good play calling solved it there. So do you have everything dialed up? Are you ready to go, Michael Penix Jr.? Because it's going to fall on you.
So when Washington has the ball, for me, it's for Texas defensively, it's the whole secondary. How are they going to hold up against wide receivers Romo Dunze and Jalen Polk? Can Michael Penix get them the ball? We know Michael likes to take these deep shots. Can they get separation, beat these guys one on one, or is Texas going to bring safeties over the top to help them out?
Yeah.
So Evan, what are your keys to the game for each team? Give me 2.
Keys of the game. Texas avoid the turnovers. We've went over that Washington defense is not great, but if you turn the ball over, that doesn't matter. That's just one play. It's not, we think Washington defense is a little weaker, but if you give them the ball, then Michael Penix gets more of the ball. You have to avoid the turnovers of your Texas at all costs. With Washington, I would say go deep, pass deep, let Michael Penix cook. You got to let him cook. 15-yard, 20-yard routes. Stay away from the screen game. I don't think they do a ton of the screen game to begin with. You got to let them air it out. I like Jordan said with the Texas DBs. I still like that matchup for Penix, but even though Texas defense is pretty solid for a Big 12 school, you don't usually see that. So keys to the game, don't turn over the ball if you're Texas. Let Michael Penix air it out if you're Washington.
So for me, for Texas to win this game, obviously, like Evan said, avoid the turnovers, right? In a game that figures to be close like this, a turnover can change the outcome of the game, right? One play, it's an extra possession you're giving to the other team. So for Texas, don't turn the ball over. And then for Washington, obviously they've got to give Penix time to, like Evan said, cook.
Yeah.
Michael Penix Jr. finished second in the Heisman voting, so we know how good he is. Especially when he's throwing to these guys like Romo Dunze, Jalen Polk, Ted McMillan. I forget his first name. I apologize. But yeah, so that's the.
And one more to that. Steve Sarkisian and whoever is the defense coordinator for Texas, no prevent defense, even if you're winning. You can't do that against someone like Michael Penix. He will eat you alive with that. But
You're correct. We know how explosive the Washington offense is this year. The back in November, I believe it was, they played USC. Now,
Yeah.
say what you want about USC's defense or the lack thereof, but they scored 52 points in that game, and scoring 52 points against any defense is something to um, not look away from. So I touched on the storyline for Texas, right? They hadn't won a Big 12 championship since 2009. They hadn't won a national championship since 2005. Obviously, they took care of that Big 12 championship this year, beating Oklahoma State, and then had still hasn't won a national championship since 2005. We'll see if that changes. So my question is, are they actually back? I know Evan touched on a little bit, but what do you think about that?
So for Texas, it was because Texas recently has been like 7-5, 8-4. So it's bowl teams, so they're definitely not back. Now we're talking about they're in the playoff. They're making high ranking bowl appearances. They're going to move to the SEC now, but ranking atop the Big 12 again. So they're back, but are they Vince Young back? Right now we're talking Colt McCoy 2009 back. Are they Vince Young back? Are they versus USC back? That's what this game is going to be. Are they? Texas has to have a strong showing here. A win or a lose, especially for the recruits coming up. You got Arch Manning, who's going to be the quarterback eventually. But for this year, if you're talking about back, that's what they're going to want to send a message. You're on the national spotlight. Sure, the Big 12 championship's nice. Not everyone's watching this. A ton of people are going to be watching this game. Are they going to take? I think they're back, but are they going to take it to the Vince Young level? We'll see about that. And the storyline for Washington, what you got, Jordan? I'll go back to you first.
I just wanted to mention that this was the last year of the Pac-12. Obviously, you've got four schools going to the Big Ten, two schools going to the ACC, which still blows my mind. West
Yeah,
Coast teams in the Atlantic
the,
Coast
the
Conference,
Atlantic
but okay,
the Atlantic coastal teams of California. I mean, Hawaii might as well just go there, right? But
might as well. Geography doesn't mean anything anymore.
yeah.
But and then you got four schools going to the Big 12, which is going to leave Oregon State and Washington State. But that's beside the point. So my question for Washington is, can they send the Pac-12 out in a big way with a national championship?
Okay, my biggest storyline is Penix again. I know I've talked a lot about him, but he is the star of the show at Washington. My biggest thing is, does he turn NFL prospects' eyes? Now, I remember specifically one playoff game. It was a semifinal game a couple years ago. You have Trevor Lawrence on one side and Justin Fields on the other side. Now I was shocked by this because Trevor Lawrence was the generational guy, right? Everyone already knew he was going to go number one overall. But I saw Justin Fields light up that game. I know they went on to lose to Alabama in the championship, but still, I saw Justin Fields light up that game, and I saw Trevor Lawrence look like he'd rather be on the beach or somewhere else. And that told me all I needed to know, and I think it told a lot of scouts all they didn't know that Justin Fields was a good quarterback. So I'm looking for that from Penix. Yes, you're talented, but you want to win, and I'm sure some NFL teams are going to be looking for that too.
You're correct. All right, so prediction time. Evan, who wins this game and why?
Oh my gosh, I know I said the other one. I could see this one going either way too, but I think it's going to be a really tight game. So, kind of elaborating on what I said a little bit earlier, I think Texas will start strong. I think you might see them build an early lead because I think they're going to have Steve Sarkisian and all them. I think they're going to have a really good script to start this game. And I think Washington's been a good team, but outside of when they played Oregon, they've started a little slow sometimes this year. That's why people underestimated them versus Oregon. But I think Washington is a very good team. I do unfortunately see Texas playing a little bit of prevent defense eventually. They got to avoid that. I hope they're listening. And I see Washington eking out a high scoring, very close one. Give me Washington over Texas 38-35.
All right, so for me, I'm just gonna just say this to begin with. I have Texas, Alabama in the national championship game. I have Texas winning this game 31-27. Um, the Longhorns just have to avoid this being a high scoring game, right? We've seen the um, we've seen the prowess of this Washington passing attack throughout the season. I do think the Texas defense makes a couple more plays than the Washington defense, which Evan mentioned is outside of the top 50 in the country. And I'm still a believer in defense wins championships. So give me the Longhorns to win this game, setting up a Texas Alabama rematch for the national championship.